This is Doug DeMuro, and today we're going to talk about a question that I get fairly frequently, namely, would I buy an electric car? And also, would I buy a self-driving car? People are often asking me this question. I get it all the time, primarily I think from car enthusiasts who expect me to say, no way! I hate that stuff. I would never buy an electric car. I would never be driven by a machine. V8s forever. But my answer on this topic is actually a lot more nuanced than that. So let's discuss. Before I get started, be sure to check out CarsNBins, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era, now with free listings. List your cool car for free and auction it on CarsNBins. And we've had some great sales recently, including this Tesla Model Y sold for over $64,000. This Saleen Ford Focus sold for $15,000. We love the weird stuff. And this old school Tesla Roadster brought almost $80,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, CarsNBins is the place to do it, with daily auctions and great selection at CarsNBins.com. Okay, so I'm going to start by answering the first question here, which is, would I buy an electric car, an EV? I get this question a lot, I really do. Obviously, I'm a big fan of gasoline-powered cars. I own something like 7 of them. Many of them have V8s, several of them have manual transmissions. So you would think that an EV would kind of be at odds with the stuff that I enjoy and appreciate the most. That makes sense. It does kind of seem like it would be that way. And that's also true for a lot of enthusiasts. When a lot of car enthusiasts get asked this question, a lot of them answer, no way, I would never buy an electric car. EVs have no soul. I would never consider it. No chance I would go electric. But my answer is, yeah, I would buy an electric car, definitely, if it fits the very right purpose in my life. So specifically, I would buy an EV under the following circumstances. Number one, I would only buy it as a daily driver car. So a car that I'm driving every day, usually to go and, film these videos. I drive a lot throughout Southern California and the Southwest in general to go and film. And I would buy an EV for that sort of daily driver purpose. Sitting in traffic, being on the freeway, basically commuting. That's what I would buy it for. And most importantly, I would buy an EV for daily driver use, but I would never, ever buy an electric car as a replacement for one of my fun, enjoyable performance enthusiast cars. So those are the circumstances in which I would buy an EV. And I think car enthusiasts, when they hear, would you buy an EV, they start thinking, they're coming from a manual gas-powered car. And that's not my situation. I would want both. But if I could have both, and if I could use the EV daily, that's the situation in which I would use it. So the big question then is, why? Why would a car enthusiast like me, a V8 lover, a manual transmission guy, why would I want an EV? And then there are actually quite a few answers to this question that I think speak to the benefits of EVs. Gas prices, obviously one, they are insane, astronomical right now. Electric cars pretty much subvert all that. You don't have to pay for gas, of course. A lot of EVs have extra interior room because of packaging. You don't have a massive engine up front. You can pull the interior out, make it a little larger, and so you have a bigger car inside. EVs are generally a little quieter than regular cars. Obviously no gasoline engine, so they're nice and quiet when you're driving around, which is nice. EVs also have some environmental benefits that gasoline cars don't have. I know that people are going to say, well, they got to make the batteries, and that's very costly to the environment, and blah, blah, blah. And I get that, but not using fossil fuels to propel the vehicle does serve an advantage, even if the creation of the batteries has a disadvantage, and so there is some environmental benefit to it. And also another benefit is you can charge an electric car at home. No more trips to the fuel station, the gas station to fill up. You can just bring it in, plug it in, and you're good to go. And it's kind of nice to be able to sort of do that, not really think about it, and not have to make, stops at gas stations, which is nice. Now, another reason, and probably the main reason why I would consider buying an electric vehicle is because I don't really use my daily driver car for driving enjoyment. Right now, this is my 2020 Land Rover Defender. fender, and I drive that car big distances all throughout Southern California and frequently over to Arizona, to Las Vegas, further than that often. And so I don't really use my daily driver car for pleasure or for excitement. It really is more of a tool, a point A to point B kind of tool. And so having like the perfect driving dynamics or a super crazy enthusiast car, that's not necessarily something I'm looking for from my daily driver vehicle. It makes sense, therefore, to consider an EV. Most of them don't have great driving dynamics, but it doesn't really matter to me from a daily driver standpoint if that daily driver car isn't the best, the fastest around corners, the most planted, the best steering and handling, all that stuff. It's not really what I'm looking for a daily driver. And instead, what I'm looking for, kind of a point A to point B commuter car, could be well served with an electric vehicle. So for my world, for that purpose, it makes sense. So then the question is, well, if you would buy an electric car, why haven't you? Why haven't I bought an electric car yet? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is charging at home is actually a little bit difficult for me. I don't have a driveway, which is an unusual circumstance for most Americans. I understand that, but I have a garage that backs up to an alley. So my circumstance is that I have two very special cars in my garage, far more special than any electric car is. My Audi RS2, my Ford GT, my Mercedes G-Wagon convertible, all of those cars are very special, very rare, and they are not going to be sitting anywhere but inside the garage. So as a result, if you had an electric car, normally you'd park it in the driveway and you just charge it there and it would be no problem, but I don't have a driveway. So then I'm stuck with street parking, and you can't easily charge an electric car when it's parked on the street. The city won't let you run a cord over the sidewalk. That's against the rules, and I can't install a charging station on like the sidewalk or the right of way because that's city property. So there's a few kinks that I need to work out in my own personal situation for exactly how I would make an electric car work with my life. I figure it out one way or another, but it's a little bit of a challenge for me right now. A charging pad would be so wonderful. The other reason why I haven't bought an electric car, and this is probably the bigger one, frankly, is that I actually drive long distances frequently. I drive to Los Angeles. I live in San Diego. I drive to Los Angeles at least once a week or once every 2 weeks. And although people in the rest of the country think that San Diego and Los Angeles are 10 minutes from each other, they are actually hours apart. In fact, those drives there and back is often 250 miles, which I will do in a single day relatively frequently. I also drive my new Land Rover Defender cross country and back every year. Every June I drive it across, every August I drive it back. And that's a trip you can't feasibly do with an electric car. EV owners will tell you, no, you just stop and fill it up and it takes 40 minutes and you have a nice lunch and then you get back on the road. That's not how I drive across country. I go and go and go and go. I don't want to stop every 5 hours for an hour. It's not a feasible thing to do. And I do that trip frequently. I've done it 4 times in the last 18 months. It's a real thing. I also, to film these videos, often have to drive all around Southern California. I frequently have to go to Palm Springs, which is 300 miles round trip with a lot of hills and elevation changes. Las Vegas, which is about 650 miles round trip. Phoenix, which is about 700 miles round trip. And all of those aren't really that feasible with an electric car. It adds some real complication. All of the companies that make EVs will happily tell you something like 92% of drivers never go more than 40 miles a day. Well, I'm one of the 8% who actually does relatively frequently make these longer trips, which becomes a problem with an electric car as my only car or as my main daily driver. Now, I should say this doesn't completely rule out an electric car because some of them are now doing 400 miles of range, which even for me solves a lot of these problems. And of course, I could get an electric car for most trips and then a non-electric car for others, but that seems like kind of defeating the purpose and a little bit of overkill. But that's an explanation of why I haven't yet gone EV. I don't think any of these challenges are like insurmountable. I think this is all still doable. I can eventually get an EV and kind of deal with the consequences and figure it out. But those are the main reasons why I haven't yet for my personal situation. So then the question is, well, what would I get? What electric car would I buy if I was buying an electric car? And the answer is, with infinite money, I would get a GMC Hummer EV. I think they are the coolest things in the world. Truly the coolest pickup truck. I think they're awesome. They're absurd. It's a truck that can crab walk, and it's also a convertible, and it's just cool, and it's fast. It has 1,000 horsepower. Everything about it I think is insane and cool and awesome, and that's what I would buy. But On the secondary market right now, they're selling for $220,000, $230,000, $240,000. That's an enormous amount of money. I won't be getting that. Not to mention the fact that it won't fit in my garage, and there's all these other issues. It's way too heavy, etc., etc. But I love those vehicles, and I would love to have one. Realistically, without infinite money, right now in my life situation, I would probably get, if I was getting an electric vehicle, either a Rivian or a Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. Rivian would be cool if I could get one at the list price. On the secondary market, those are selling for $110,000, $120,000, which is a lot of money. I think the truck is worth that, frankly, given all that it offers, but I'm not really about to spend $120,000 on a pickup truck. It's not really my kind of thing. I don't like buying new cars and spending big new car money anyway, but I think at list price, Rivian makes sense. And a Mach-E GT, I think, is a fantastic vehicle. I think it drives well, it handles well, the technology is great. There's a lot of really good things to say about that car, and I think that it would be on my short list as well. Now, you're probably wondering, well, why not Tesla? The truth is, I love Tesla. I think Teslas are great. They make fantastic cars. Living in Southern California, I must say I'm a little bored with it. They're everywhere. Last year, the Tesla Model Y outsold the Honda Accord, which is insane. If you told me when I was a kid that a startup car company was going to outsell the Honda Accord within 15 years, I would be astonished. It's a ridiculous thing, but they are really common. And it's just not cool. They kind of have become sort of the Toyota Camry of electric cars. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's a great car. The reason everybody buys it is because it's so great. But I always like to get stuff that's a little more interesting and exciting and unusual, and I think I would pursue that. I do recommend Teslas to everybody. I think they're great cars. I just think we've gotten to a point where they're just not special anymore. They're just kind of everywhere. But they do have a lot of great benefits, and I would probably consider one, further down on my list eventually. So that's electric vehicles. There's an explanation of my electric vehicle situation. But what about self-driving cars? Would I buy, if it were to ever truly exist, a self-driving car? A lot of enthusiasts, again, would say, never. I never want the steering wheel out of my hands. I love to drive and feel the fun and the pedals and the acceleration, blah, blah, blah. And I get all that, but my answer here once again is yes, I would buy a self-driving car if the situation presented itself. I spend an enormous amount of my driving time sitting in traffic. If I go up to Los Angeles and come back, I'm sitting on the 405, I'm sitting on the 5, bumper to bumper traffic, often for an hour or 2 hours a couple times a week. It's tremendously annoying. And the simple truth is, I don't need to be in some fun, exciting car that I'm steering just to sit in 2-mile-an-hour bumper-to-bumper traffic. It's just not desirable to me. And so if I had a situation in which I could get a self-driving vehicle for that trip, yeah, I would love to do that. I'm a car enthusiast. I love driving, but I don't love sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the 405. It's not like I'm like, yes, today I get to get up and drive and sit in bumper-to-bumper on the 405. It's not something that I'm interested in. It's not something that I want to do. And I think most car enthusiasts, if they're being honest with themselves, would say, yeah, okay, maybe in that circumstance, it would be nice to have a car where it purely drives itself and I don't have to think about that kind of thing in the heavy traffic situation. Now, once again, I want to make a point. I wouldn't want to get a self-driving car to replace my fun cars. I still want to go out and have fun on weekends. Even when I'm running errands, I drive my fun cars, my RS2, my Ford GT, to the post office or whatever, because you're not in bumper-to-bumper traffic. I mean, you're going around corners and whatever. But if I'm driving on longer trips, which I do frequently, at least once or twice a week, on the freeway, sitting in traffic, I don't see why I wouldn't want a self-driving car. It would be tremendously beneficial, and it would really cut out some of the annoyance of, having to sit there and babysit the car when you're doing such a simple task that a machine should be able to do with no problem. And frankly, one of the only reasons that I'm actually a little bit disappointed with my new Land Rover Defender is I wish it had better self-driving tech. It has great adaptive cruise control. It'll bring it all the way to a stop, get started again, that's great. But I wish it had better steering assist. Many new cars have that. My Defender is now 2 years old. And so it was a little too early to have some of these more advanced systems. And I think some of the latest driver assist technology is fantastic. And I would really, really, really love the opportunity to have a car that has a little bit better of that. And I've already got something like 32,000 miles on my new Defender. It's been a great car. And I planned to buy it and drive it to 100,000 miles. But I'm thinking now it probably won't quite get there as more driver assist technology gets better and better. And I think to myself, boy, I could be sitting on the 405 not doing anything. That would be really nice. And so that's kind of my thought on that subject. So there you go. Would I buy an electric vehicle or self-driving car? Yes, I actually would buy either of them. Even though I'm an enthusiast and I love cars and manual transmissions and gas engines and all that stuff, if the circumstances were right in my life, if I could daily drive these cars, sit in traffic in these cars, an electric vehicle, self-driving car, it would be fantastic. And I would really welcome that in my life, frankly. It would be nice to have that benefit for daily drivability. But I really want to stress it will not replace the fun and enjoyable cars. And I really think there is room in this world for you to be a car enthusiast and to like manual transmission, fun, gas-powered cars and still do most of your miles in kind of a boring driver assist or self-driving situation that is electric. Yes, it's not quite as fun, but those aren't exactly fun miles anyway, and you can go have fun on the weekends. And frankly, I think it'll make you appreciate your gas-powered manual transmission car even more.